wrestled with him. And he said, let me go, for the day breaks. But he said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. So he said to him, what is your name? He said, Jacob. And he said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed. Israel, there's that E-L again. That suggests the name of God. Bethel, the house of God. Israel, prince with God. A marvelous name. Jacob's name now is Israel. A name that would live in history. God's people would be given that name. Those descendants of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Was Jacob a blessed man? He certainly was. Jacob saw Joseph again. We're going to look in Genesis chapter 45 in just a minute. Here is his favorite son. And he thought that his son was dead. As a matter of fact, he was absolutely sure that he would never see his son again. He had been deceived, but he was convinced his son was dead and he would never see him again. In fact, he's so sure of that after Joseph had revealed himself to his brothers, they came back to Jacob and they said to him, Joseph is alive. And in chapter 45, verse 25, then they came up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to Jacob their father, and they told him, saying, Joseph is still alive, and he is governor over all the land of Egypt. And Jacob's heart stood still because he did not believe them. They had seen him, but Jacob still did not believe. Verse 27, but when they told him all the words which Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the carts which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob their father revived. Can you imagine having a child? And I think about children that disappear. Or children, young people, or whatever age people, maybe go into some country and they just vanish. And then maybe 20, 30 years later, they show up. And when I say show up, they're released. And it's just almost an unbelievable thing. Jacob's spirit was revived. Then Israel said, it is enough. Joseph, my son, is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. And then he goes down to Egypt. Chapter 46 of Genesis, verse 29. So Joseph made ready his chariot and went up to Goshen to meet his father Israel. And he presented himself to him and fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. And Israel said to Joseph, now let me die, since I have seen your face, because you are still alive. Can you picture that scene? Here is this old man, 130 years old if I remember correctly. And here his son comes and they embrace and they cry. It says in the New King James Version, a good while. Was Jacob a blessed man? God would refer to himself as the God of Jacob. Over and over in the Bible, you read, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Can you imagine being such a man that through the ages, when God wanted to identify himself, he would identify himself as the God of Tim, the God of Randy, the God of Al, the God of Rohan, the God of Lynn. Can you imagine that? God would refer to himself as the God of Jacob. That would be some blessing, wouldn't it? Hebrews chapter 11, verse 9, by faith, he dwelt in the land of promise as in a foreign country, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. When you're talking about Abraham, when you drop down to verse 13, these all died in faith, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, were assured of them, embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For those who say such things declare plainly that they seek a homeland. And truly, if they had called to mind that country from which they had come out, they would have had opportunity to return. But now they desire a better, that is, a heavenly country. Therefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. Their God. Whose God? The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. I want to ask this question. Let me just make this. Here's a man that has been blessed tremendously by God, been blessed materially. 12 sons, that marvelous dream, the change in his name. Now his name is Israel. He saw his son that he never thought he would see again alive. And God would refer to himself as the God of Jacob. Is that a good life? I'd say that's a good life. And again, I'm not trying in any way to put down Jacob. He's one of the great men of faith that we've just read from here in Hebrews chapter 11. And I don't want to say anything that would remove that from our minds. But I'm pointing out that sometimes we can get so overwhelmed with our cares and our burdens and our hurts and our disappointments that they can blind our eyes to how richly blessed we truly are. There's a principle in all of that, and that is God wants us to be thankful people. Psalm 100, make a joyful shout to the Lord, all you lands. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before his presence with singing. Know that the Lord, he is God. It is he who has made us and not we ourselves. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Enter into his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise. Be thankful to him and bless his name. Philippians 4, verse 6, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. When you look at Romans chapter 1, it may point out to us one of the biggest concerns or greatest concerns in regard to thanksgiving. In Romans chapter 1, we have the decline of the Gentile world. And eventually what God says is, he says 3 different times, I'm going to give you up. You know, I guess the saddest day that could come in an individual's life is the day that God gives you up. I pray that I never even start down that road, much less get to a point to where God would just say, I give you up. That would be terrible. Look at verse 21 of Romans 1. Because although they knew God, They did not glorify him as God, nor were they thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools. They knew God, they did not glorify him, and they were not thankful. And because of that, you read 3 times where God says that I'm going to give you up. And what that tells us is when we count the blessings and remember all of the blessings that God gives us, and all of us are blessed, tremendously blessed. What that does is it draws us closer to God. But when we cease to be thankful, and we fail to see the wonderful blessings that God has blessed us with, that tends to take us away from God. Thanksgiving comes in 3 levels. There's the non-existent level. And those are people who never think about their blessings. They're never thankful. It's like the proverbial hog that walks around eating the acorns off the ground and enjoying those acorns, but he never looks up to see from where those acorns have fallen. And there are people that walk around enjoying blessings that God has allowed them to have, and they never look up and consider that all of these blessings are from God. They're never thankful. There's the verbal level. I think probably most of us as children, we were taught to say thank you. Somebody gave us something, thank you. Somebody did something for us, thank you. We grew up learning to say that. And yet what I'm going to suggest is we can say thank you 100 times and yet not be thankful. We can say it, but really not be thankful. And then there is the heartfelt level. When a person really is thankful, he counts his blessings. And he becomes aware of how richly blessed that he is, and his heart overflows with thankfulness. Not just saying thankfulness from the lips, but thanksgiving that pours forth from a heart that is truly, truly thankful. I remember hearing about a man who obeyed the gospel. Not long after he obeyed the gospel, he wanted to make a talk at services. And this man had lived a very immoral life prior to becoming a Christian. And he wanted to practice his lesson, so he practiced it on the preacher. And what he chose to talk about was the 99 and the one lost sheep. How the Lord had left the 99 to go find that one lost sheep. And the preacher said there was no doubt in him talking about that. He realized he was that lost sheep. And I'm going to tell you, all of us were at one time, if we're not Christians, if we are Christians. And that's what the Lord has done. The Lord came to seek and to save the lost. Or this young lady who obeyed the gospel. Before she obeyed the gospel, she was sitting in a Bible class, and she cried all through the Bible class. This was before she was baptized. Later, she said the teacher, talking about why she cried, she said the teacher said that if Christ knew that I was the only one who would be saved, he would have come to this earth and died on that cross to save me. And she cried all the way through the Bible class. She said, I'd never thought about that. Do we think about that? We're not the only ones. But if you had been the only one, if I had been the only one to be obedient to the Lord, he would have come to save me. How long has it been since you wept over the fact that the Lord loved you? God loved you so much that he would send his only begotten Son to come to this world and to be mistreated and eventually to be hung on a cross. The most shameful, the most agonizing death that a person could die. And this same young lady said later, she was sitting in a Bible class and she was crying again. This would have been a different time. This would have been the first time that she came to a Bible class. And she said the teacher would call out a book in the Bible and a chapter, and she said everybody in there was turning their Bibles to the book and to the chapter. She said, I had no idea which way to go. She hadn't been brought up by parents like many of us were brought up. She knew nothing about the Bible. But she sure was thankful. And you know, it's not surprising that a person like that would soon render obedience to the Lord in baptism. You know, here's something we have to understand and fight against. And that is, the more we receive, the less thankful we tend to be. The Israelites being delivered from the bondage in Egypt, God providing food, God providing water, not just for them but their animals, God taking care of all of their needs. They really had never had it so good, and about all you can read about is their complaining and their murmuring. I'm going to say this, I'm going to use the word we, because that includes me. You know, we've got to do better than that. And even when we're faced with heartaches and hardships and sickness and disappointments and hurts in life, sometimes what we have to do is stop and count our blessings. And I'm not suggesting by any means that those other things are just a walk in the park. I'm not suggesting that. But what I'm saying is we have to stop and just think how good God has been for me. If I thought about it, Tim, and I didn't contact you, one of my favorite songs is "The Lord Has Been Mindful of Me." He blesses and blesses again. Well, we sing the song, "Count your many blessings, name them one by one." And so many blessings we have. Let me just mention, as we think about the church here at Somerville Road, you can probably think about a lot more. We have young people who are very interested in spiritual matters. I'm thankful for that. We have faithful Christians of all ages. elderly people who are faithful, people who are not quite elderly who are faithful, people that fall somewhere in the middle who are faithful. We've got some younger people who are faithful. There are a lot of people in a lot of places that would give anything to be able to worship with a group like the group here at Somerville Road. Faithful Christians who are concerned about using their abilities. I'll probably say something about this later. I didn't try to keep count. I just wonder over the last few months at our house how many cards have come. I don't mean 2 or 3. I don't mean 10 or 20. I don't know. How many meals have been bought, been brought, and bought? Let me tell you, we have good people, faithful people who are concerned, people that, men who want to learn to do better than they're doing, trying to improve. Faithful Christians who love each other. Would do anything within their power to help someone else. And we have God who will be with us. Are we blessed people? We are blessed people, almost beyond measure. Do we have people here who have experienced just almost crushing things in their lives? Yes, we do. Some things I don't know about, don't need to know about, but I've learned some things through the years. And again, that's not to minimize those things. What we have to do is we have to count our blessings, probably is what I should have put there. Count our blessings. Just like the Israelites were headed to the promised land, we too are headed to the promised land. One of the things that makes life, I'm going to use the word bearable, and that's probably not the right word to use, is the fact that we know we are going to a place where these heartaches and hurts and disappointments, they won't exist. And that right there may be the greatest blessing. The fact that we've been forgiven, we have hope, and we're living each day so that one day we can be with God in heaven. Let's always remember how blessed we are and to thank God for our blessings. And that will help us in keeping focused on Him, headed toward heaven. And one day, this faith that we have, which is not some pie in the sky faith, it will become reality. And we can be with God forever. We're going to sing the song that will appear on the screen behind us. If you are using a book, 347, the question is asked in the song, who will follow Jesus? At the end of the chorus it says, I am on the Lord's side, Master, here am I. Who will follow Jesus? Who will make reply? I am on the Lord's side. Master, here am I. If you're not following Jesus, you need to begin today doing that. If you've fallen away from following Jesus, you need to get back in line with him. Not with somebody, with Christ. You get in line with him, you follow him, you do what his will teaches. And then you too can be in heaven. Let's stand and sing for our encouragement, please.
Who will follow Jesus,
Standing for the right,
holding up his banner in the thickest fight, listening for his order, ready to obey. Who will follow Jesus, serving him today? Who will follow Jesus, who will make reply? I am on the Lord's side, Master, here am I. Who will follow Jesus, who will make reply? I am on the Lord's side, Master, here am I. Who will follow Jesus in life's busy ways, working for the Master, giving him the praise, earnest in his vineyard, honoring his laws, faithful to his counsel, watchful for his calls. Who will follow Jesus? Who will make reply? I am on the Lord's side, Master, here am I. Who will follow Jesus? Who will make reply? I am on the Lord's side, Master, here am I. Who will follow Jesus in his work of love, leading others to him, lifting prayers above? Courage, faithful servant, in his word we see. On our side forever will his Savior be. Who will follow Jesus? Who will make reply? I am on the Lord's side, Master, here am I. Who will follow Jesus? Who will make reply? I am on the Lord's side, Master, here am I. Sing number 165 to prepare our minds for Lord's Supper. I'm sorry.